In Eldenwick, the night shift was not just a schedule. It was a category of life. The city sat inland, built around a steelworks and a chemical plant that had outlived its own purpose. During the day, Eldenwick looked like any other tired industrial town. Shops half open, buses running late, men in work boots drinking coffee too fast. At night, the plant lights turned the low clouds orange, and the streets emptied as if the city itself went to sleep. People said the night shift paid better. People said it was quieter. People said you got used to it. What they didn't say was that the night shift made you easier to lose. The first man didn't go missing. That wasn't the phrase the company used. In October 2007, a contract worker named Jonas Pike failed to report at 2200 hours. His supervisor marked him as absent. HR processed him as a no-call, no-show. Jonas lived in a rented room above a garage on the north side of town. His landlord assumed he'd skipped town. There was no family to call, no partner, no one filed anything. 2 weeks later, his access badge was deactivated. A new worker took his locker. The system moved on without friction. By the time the disappearances became noticeable, they were already routine. Night shift workers fell into patterns. Temporary contracts, shared housing, cash advances, broken phones, and exhaustion that made everything feel normal, even fear. In Eldenwick, most people knew someone who worked nights. They also knew not to ask too many questions about the plant, because the plant was the only reason Eldenwick still existed. The company called it turnover, but the numbers didn't behave like turnover. A payroll clerk named Mara Wexler saw it first. It started with a mild discrepancy: too many final paychecks, too many terminated contracts without exit interviews. Workers who quit the night shift usually did it loudly, with complaints and anger and arguments about overtime. The ones Mara was seeing didn't quit like that. They simply stopped. No phone calls, no resignation letters, no requests for references. They were there 1 week, gone the next, and their files closed with neat, identical language. Contract concluded. Employee unavailable. In the margins of her spreadsheet, Mara wrote a private note. Unusually clean. In 2009, the pattern tightened. Workers disappeared most often on the same lines: the chemical wash stations, the waste sorting area, the rail unloading tunnel behind Plant 3. These were unpleasant jobs. Loud jobs. Jobs where cameras often failed because steam-fogged lenses and vibrations shook mounts loose. It was easy for something to happen there without clear footage. And yet, there were no accidents. Not officially. A union representative named Gareth Nolan began asking questions after 2 men from his list stopped responding within the same month. Gareth wasn't naive. He understood the math of industrial labor. Some people break, some people leave, some people vanish into other cities. But these men weren't drifters. They had routines. They had debts and plans and schedules. One of them, Luis Marin, had been saving to bring his younger sister to Eldenwick from a different country. He talked about it constantly. He was careful with money. He showed up early. He never missed overtime. On a Tuesday night in February 2009, Luis clocked in at 21:48. At 2:10, his supervisor signed off on an equipment check in Luis's section. By 6 o'clock, Luis hadn't clocked out. His lunchbox was still in the break room fridge. The company filed it as abandonment of post. Gareth asked to see the footage. Security said the camera in that corridor had failed. Eldenwick had a local journalist too, Hannah Klein, who wrote small pieces that people skimmed. A new bus route, a council vote, a fire in an empty warehouse. She didn't think much about the plant until Mara, the payroll clerk, sent her an anonymous envelope. Inside was a list: names, dates, employee IDs, departments. Next to each, the same 3 words: final paycheck processed. Hannah spent 3 nights cross-checking the names with public records. Some were migrants. Some were local men in their 40s. A few were women. Nearly all lived alone or in temporary housing. Most had no one in Eldenwick who could easily prove they were missing. Hannah called Gareth Nolan, then drove to the north side of town where the rentals were cheapest, where rooms came with cracked windows and no questions asked. She knocked on doors. Some tenants pretended not to be home. Some listened through chains and never opened. One landlord shrugged and said, "People leave." Then finally she met Eli Stroud. Eli was a night shift mechanic with hands scarred by years of metal and heat. He still worked at the plant, but he had the look of someone counting days. "They don't disappear like you think," Eli told her. "It's not a fight. It's not blood. It's a handoff." "Handoff to who?" Hannah asked. Eli stared past her shoulder, as if measuring the street. "They call it reassignment," he said, "but no one comes back from it." Eli explained the rumor every night worker knew and everyday worker laughed off. There were two employment categories at the plant: direct hires and contract labor. Direct hires had protections, benefits, visibility. Contract labor was different, came in waves, filled the worst jobs, and left without leaving a dent. Somewhere inside the contractor system, there was a procedure called night stabilization. It wasn't written on posters. It wasn't announced. But workers whispered about it like people whisper about dangerous machinery, half superstition, half truth. If your performance dropped, if you complained too loudly, if you missed a safety briefing, if you were flagged as non-compliant, the contractor could relocate you to another facility. The pay would be adjusted. Housing would be provided. For desperate people, it sounded like help. For those who had been around long enough, it sounded like a door closing. Hannah filed information requests. The city claimed the contractor was private and not subject to disclosure. The company insisted workers were free individuals making personal choices. Police said there were no missing reports. It was a perfect circle. No report meant no investigation. No investigation meant no evidence. No evidence meant no report. Hannah needed something that couldn't be filed into a drawer. She found it in the hospital. A nurse named Paula Dren worked the overnight intake desk at Eldenwick General. She had seen too many injuries from the plant: burns, crushed fingers, chemical rashes. When Hannah asked if Paula had noticed anything unusual, Paula hesitated. "There's a pattern," she said quietly, "but I didn't want to be the one who said it." Paula described patients who arrived from the plant's contractor housing with the same symptoms: dehydration, insomnia, confusion. They spoke carefully, as if words were monitored. Many didn't know the date. Some didn't know where they were staying. "And then?" Hannah asked. Paula's face tightened. "They stopped coming," she said, "and their numbers disappear from our system, like they were never registered." "What numbers?" Paula swallowed. "Not medical numbers," she said. "Other numbers. The kind they write on wristbands when someone doesn't have proper ID." Hannah's story began to take shape, ugly and plausible. Not a serial killer. Not a monster hiding behind pipes. Process. A pipeline that used legal language to swallow people. Contract labor didn't vanish. It was absorbed, moved into places where names didn't matter, where oversight didn't reach, where people were too tired and too alone to fight. Still, Hannah needed proof that would survive denial. And then the plant gave her an opening. In June 2010, the company announced a safety modernization program, including upgraded security systems. For a brief period, the internal contractor portal showed a scheduling module to more users than intended. Mara, the payroll clerk, still had access through an old administrative login. Late one night, she opened a page she wasn't supposed to see. It listed a set of transfers planned over the next 2 weeks. Not transfers between departments. Transfers labeled outbound. Each entry included a name, an employee ID, and a time window. Most were night shift. At the bottom of the page, a line appeared like a note to a machine. Process priority. Unclaimed. Mara printed it. Her hands shook so badly she tore the paper. Then she printed it again, folded it into her bag, and drove straight to Hannah's apartment. Hannah read it twice, then once more, slower. "Unclaimed," she whispered. Mara nodded. "Like packages," she said. Hannah scheduled her publication for the following week. But the story didn't make it to print. On Monday morning, her editor called her into the office and closed the door. He didn't look angry. He looked frightened. "They said we can't run it," he told her. "Who said?" Hannah asked. He glanced at the ceiling, as if microphones lived there. "They didn't threaten us," he said. "They didn't have to. They just explained what would happen to the paper if we did." Hannah left the office with her notes and her recording device and the printed contractor page folded inside her jacket. That night, she drove to the plant. She didn't intend to trespass. She just wanted to watch the shift change, to see faces, to remember that the people on her list were real. At 21:30, buses dropped contract workers at the gate. At 21:47, they filed through security in small groups. At 2200 hours, the gate closed. At 2:17, a side gate opened near the rail tunnel. 2 unmarked vans rolled out. Hannah lifted her camera. Her hands were steady. The vans moved slowly, without hurry, like vehicles that knew no one would stop them. As they passed under the street lamp, Hannah caught one detail: a laminated tag on the back door of the second van. White letters on black plastic. Unclaimed. Hannah never published the article. The next day, her apartment was broken into. Nothing valuable was taken. Her laptop was still there. Her camera was still there. But her notes were gone. The printed page was gone. Her recorder was gone. The burglary report was filed. The police officer shrugged and said, "These things happen." When Hannah asked if they could take fingerprints, he smiled politely. "On what?" he asked. In the months that followed, the night shift continued. The plant kept running. The city kept shrinking. And the disappearances continued, quiet as ever. Workers would be present one night, smoking outside the gate, laughing weakly, talking about overtime, and then absent the next, their absence sealed with the soft stamp of bureaucracy. In Eldenwick, it wasn't called kidnapping. That word implied conflict. This was smoother than conflict. This was administration. Because when someone disappears and no one files a report, the system doesn't call it a tragedy. Calls it clearance. And the night shift in Eldenwick was where people became easy to clear.